Right now, 3 miles beneath your feet, creatures are moving through a world that has never known sunlight. In trenches deeper than mountains are tall, translucent jellyfish pulse with their own living light, while fish with antifreeze blood glide through pressures that would crush steel like paper. This is the deep sea, Earth's final frontier. We have better maps of Mars than our own ocean floor. 95% of our oceans remain unexplored, unmapped, unseen. Down there, in what scientists call the abyss, the familiar rules of life dissolve into something far stranger. Every breath you take connects you to this hidden realm. The oxygen in your lungs was produced by organisms floating in waters, fed by nutrients from crushing depths below. Weather patterns, climate stability, even the temperature outside your window depend on ancient currents that snake through underwater canyons deeper than any on land. For decades, scientists believed nothing could survive such extremes. They called it the lifeless zone. They were magnificently wrong. The deep sea teems with creatures so alien they seem born from dreams rather than evolution. Fish carry their own lanterns through eternal night. Tube worms tall as trees cluster around volcanic vents. Bacteria feast on poison and thrive in boiling water. Tonight, we descend into that liquid darkness to discover what's truly hidden in the abyss. And it may be more wondrous than you ever imagined. Wherever you are listening tonight, whatever hour finds you in your corner of the world, thank you for joining this journey into the unknown. There's something beautiful about sharing wonder across whatever distance separates us. Let's get into the video. Imagine descending through the ocean like falling through the floors of an invisible skyscraper. Each level has its own rules, its own residents, its own relationship with light and pressure and possibility. But unlike any building we might know, this structure stretches not hundreds of feet, but miles into the earth, and each floor down becomes stranger than the last. Near the surface, in what oceanographers call the epipelagic zone, sunlight still penetrates. Here, in the top 200 meters, familiar creatures swim through blue water. Dolphins leap, tuna race through currents, and microscopic phytoplankton bloom in vast underwater meadows, turning sunlight into oxygen with the same alchemy that powers every forest on land. This is the ocean we know, the one that fills postcards and documentaries, warm and bright and comprehensible. But step off that first floor, and everything changes. Between 200 and 1,000 meters lies the mesopelagic zone, the twilight realm where sunlight fades to a deep blue whisper, then to nothing at all. Here, the temperature drops like a stone. The pressure doubles, then doubles again. This is where the familiar rules begin to bend, where creatures start to make their own light because the sun has given up trying to reach them. And then, at 1,000 meters, you cross a threshold that few humans have ever experienced directly. You enter the bathypelagic zone, the midnight realm, where darkness becomes absolute and pressure becomes a crushing, omnipresent force. No plant has ever grown here. No flower has ever bloomed. Yet this zone teems with life, creatures that have learned to thrive in conditions that would kill most surface dwellers in seconds. Deeper still lies the abyssopelagic zone, stretching from 4,000 to 6,000 meters down. Here, on vast plains of sediment that have never known sunlight, the pressure exceeds anything we experience on land by hundreds of times. The water hovers just above freezing, and the darkness is so complete that the concept of day and night becomes meaningless. This is where the Earth's true architecture begins to reveal itself, in underwater mountains that dwarf the Himalayas and canyons, that make the Grand Canyon look like a scratch in the dirt. And finally, in the deepest places of all, lies the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. These are the trenches, the cracks in the Earth's crust where tectonic plates meet and one slides beneath another, creating wounds in the ocean floor that can plunge 11 kilometers deep. Here, pressure becomes so intense that it changes the very nature of matter itself, and yet, impossibly, life persists. Each of these zones isn't just defined by depth, but by pressure, that invisible force that shapes everything in the deep sea. At sea level, we live under one atmosphere of pressure, the weight of all the air above us pressing down with about 14.5 pounds per square inch. For every 10 meters you descend into the ocean, you add another atmosphere. By the time you reach 1,000 meters, you're experiencing 100 atmospheres of pressure. In the deepest trenches, that number climbs to over 1,100 atmospheres, more than 16,000 pounds per square inch, pressing in from all directions. To understand what this means, imagine trying to live at the bottom of a stack of elephants stretching a mile high. The pressure doesn't just squeeze, it fundamentally alters how molecules behave, how gases dissolve, how life itself can function. And yet, in one of nature's most elegant solutions, deep-sea creatures have learned to thrive here by becoming partners with pressure rather than fighting against it. Their bodies are largely fluid, with no rigid structures to collapse. Their cell membranes are specially adapted to remain flexible under crushing force. Some fish have evolved proteins that actually work better under extreme pressure, becoming more efficient the deeper they go. They haven't conquered the abyss by resisting its conditions, they've embraced them, becoming creatures that could no more survive at the surface than we could survive at the bottom. Temperature adds another layer to this alien architecture. While tropical seas at the surface might reach 85 degrees Fahrenheit, the deep ocean maintains a constant chill just above freezing, usually between 35 and 39 degrees. This isn't just cold, it's the kind of bone-deep cold that would stop a human heart in minutes. Yet for deep-sea creatures, this frigid stability is home, a constant they can depend on in a world where almost nothing else remains steady. The geography of the deep sea reads like something from an alien planet. The abyssal plains stretch for thousands of miles, flat as prairies but covered in a fine rain of sediment that has been drifting down from the surface for millions of years. This marine snow carries with it the remains of countless microscopic lives, creating a carpet of nutrients that feeds the strange gardens of the deep. Rising from these plains are seamounts, underwater mountains that can tower 20,000 feet above the seafloor. Many have never been explored, their peaks and valleys home to creatures that exist nowhere else on Earth. Some seamounts are extinct volcanoes, their cratered summits creating unique ecosystems in the middle of oceanic deserts. Others are still active, adding new rock to the ocean floor, grain by grain, century by century. And then there are the trenches, those great scars in the Earth's surface, where the planet's moving pieces grind against each other. The Mariana Trench in the Pacific stretches for over 1,500 miles and plunges to depths that make Mount Everest look like a hill. If you could somehow drain all the water from the Pacific and stand at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the peak of Everest placed beside you would still leave you over a mile underwater if the ocean were refilled. These trenches aren't just deep, they're geologically active. The Peru-Chile Trench runs along the western coast of South America, formed by the Nazca Plate sliding beneath the South American continent. The Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic reaches depths of over 8 kilometers, creating the deepest point in that ocean. Each trench has its own character, its own unique community of life forms, its own relationship with the volcanic forces that created it. The walls of these trenches often slope at dramatic angles, creating vertical ecosystems where different species occupy different elevations like apartments in a skyscraper. Near the top, where pressure is merely crushing rather than impossible, certain fish species patrol the slopes. Deeper down, only the most specialized creatures survive, including amphipods that look like translucent shrimp and can withstand pressures that would liquefy most living things. At the very bottom of these trenches lies a landscape that changes our understanding of what Earth itself can support. Here, tectonic forces create an environment of constant subtle movement. Sediments shift and settle, creating miniature avalanches in slow motion. Occasional earthquakes reshape the terrain in moments, while chemical seeps alter the water chemistry in ways that would be toxic to surface life, but essential to the specialized organisms that call these depths home. These aren't just impressive numbers. They represent fundamentally different worlds, places where the physics of life operates under rules we're only beginning to understand. In the deepest parts of these trenches, water doesn't behave quite like the water we know. Under such extreme pressure, its molecular structure begins to change, becoming denser, more viscous, almost syrupy compared to surface water. The darkness of these depths isn't just the absence of light, it's the presence of something else entirely. Down here, many creatures create their own illumination through bioluminescence, chemical reactions that produce light without heat. The result is a landscape painted in alien colors, blues and greens and reds that exist nowhere else on Earth, living constellations drifting through liquid space. But darkness shapes more than just vision. In a world without light cues, the very concept of direction becomes fluid. There is no up or down in any meaningful sense, no north or south, no landmarks to navigate by. Deep sea creatures orient themselves through pressure gradients, chemical trails, magnetic fields, and vibrations that travel through the water like whispered messages across vast distances. They inhabit a truly three-dimensional world where movement can occur in any direction with equal ease. This disorientation extends to how we, as surface dwellers, struggle to comprehend the deep sea's scale. When we imagine ocean depths, our land-based minds try to create familiar reference points. But the abyss defeats comparison. It's not like being underground in a cave system, because caves have walls and ceilings. It's not like being in space, because space is empty while the deep sea teems with invisible life. It exists in its own category of experience, a liquid universe with its own physics and logic. The sheer volume of this dark realm is staggering. If you could somehow illuminate the entire deep sea at once, the sight would overwhelm human comprehension. Imagine standing in a cathedral so vast that its ceiling disappears into darkness. Then multiply that sense of awe by infinity. The deep ocean contains more livable space than all terrestrial environments combined, yet most of it remains as mysterious to us as the surface of distant planets. This architecture of depth creates not just different environments, but different concepts of time itself. At the surface, life moves to the rhythm of days and seasons, tides and storms. But in the abyss, time flows differently. Creatures here may live for centuries, growing slowly, reproducing rarely, existing in a kind of biological slow motion that matches the patient pulse of geological time. The deep sea's structure shapes more than just the creatures that live there. It influences weather patterns across the globe, storing vast amounts of heat and carbon, driving currents that regulate climate from the Arctic to the tropics. The architecture of depth isn't separate from the architecture of our atmosphere. They're part of the same system, the same living planet, connected by invisible threads of current and chemistry. And, perhaps most remarkably, this entire alien realm exists not on some distant planet, but right here beneath our feet. While we dream of exploring Mars or the moons of Jupiter, the strangest worlds in our solar system may be hiding just a few miles below the waves, waiting in the patient darkness. Shaped by pressures and possibilities we're only beginning to fathom. In the crushing darkness of the deep sea, where no sunlight has ever penetrated, and pressure would flatten most living things in an instant, something remarkable moves through the water. A creature about the size of a basketball drifts slowly forward, its translucent body pulsing with rings of blue light that travel along its bell like ripples on a pond. This is a deep-sea jellyfish, and it's doing something that should be impossible. It's making its own light. Bioluminescence, the ability to produce light through chemical reactions, is perhaps the most magical adaptation in the deep sea. Unlike the harsh glare of an electric bulb or the flickering heat of a flame, bioluminescent light is cold, efficient, and eerily beautiful. The chemistry behind it is elegant in its simplicity. A molecule called luciferin combines with an enzyme called luciferase in the presence of oxygen, creating light without heat, without fire, without any of the wasteful energy loss that characterizes most forms of illumination we know. But in the deep sea, bioluminescence isn't just beautiful, it's essential. Nearly 90% of creatures living below 1,000 meters can produce their own light, turning the midnight zone into a galaxy of living stars. Each flash, each glow, each pulse of light serves a purpose as specific as spoken language. Some lights are lures, attracting prey close enough to catch. Others are warnings, startling predators with sudden brilliant displays. Still, others are signals, species-specific patterns that help creatures find mates in the vast darkness. The anglerfish has perfected the art of deceptive illumination. Hanging from its forehead like a fishing rod is a bioluminescent lure called an esker, filled with symbiotic bacteria that glow with a cold blue-green light. In the absolute darkness of the deep, this tiny beacon draws curious prey close enough for the anglerfish to strike with lightning speed. Its mouth, lined with needle-sharp teeth that curve inward, ensures that nothing escapes once caught. But perhaps the most extraordinary thing about anglerfish isn't their hunting strategy. It's their approach to reproduction. Male anglerfish are tiny compared to females, sometimes 1/10 their size. When a male encounters a female, he doesn't court her in any conventional sense. Instead, he bites onto her side and never lets go. Over time, his tissues fuse with hers until he becomes a permanent appendage, existing solely to provide sperm when needed. This extreme adaptation makes sense in a world where encounters between individuals of the same species might be extraordinarily rare. When you find your mate in the abyss, you quite literally become part of them forever. The vampire squid represents another approach to deep-sea survival, though despite its ominous name, it doesn't actually drink blood. Instead, this remarkable creature has evolved the ability to turn itself inside out when threatened, exposing spines and photophores that create a dazzling light display designed to confuse predators. Its body is covered in light-producing organs that can flash in coordinated patterns, creating what researchers describe as a living constellation. But the vampire squid's most impressive adaptation may be its metabolism. It has the lowest metabolic rate of any cephalopod, allowing it to survive in the oxygen-poor waters of the deep ocean's oxygen minimum zone. While most animals would suffocate in such conditions, the vampire squid has learned to exist on the edge of survival, moving slowly, breathing minimally, conserving every calorie for essential functions. Deep sea fish have evolved body plans that would seem grotesque on the surface, but represent perfect adaptations to their environment. Many have enormous mouths and expandable stomachs, allowing them to consume prey much larger than themselves. In a world where meals are few and far between, the ability to take advantage of any feeding opportunity, no matter how large, becomes crucial for survival. The gulper eel can unhinge its massive jaw to swallow fish several times its own size. Its stomach stretches like a balloon to accommodate oversized meals that might need to last for months. The pelican eel has taken this strategy even further, with a mouth so large it resembles a living net. When it encounters a school of small fish or shrimp, it simply opens wide and scoops them up like a whale feeding on krill. Many deep-sea fish have also evolved enormous eyes to capture every available photon of light, whether from bioluminescent displays or the faint traces of sunlight that might penetrate from far above. The giant squid's eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom, can reach the size of dinner plates. These massive visual organs can detect the shadow of a sperm whale passing overhead from hundreds of meters away, giving the squid precious seconds to escape before the whale's echolocation locks onto its position. But some deep-sea creatures have taken the opposite approach, abandoning sight altogether in favor of other senses. Cave fish living in underwater caverns have no eyes at all, their bodies redirecting the energy that would have gone into vision toward enhanced lateral line systems that detect the slightest water movements. They navigate their dark world through touch and vibration, creating mental maps of their environment through pressure waves and chemical gradients. The pressure adaptations of deep-sea creatures represent some of evolution's most ingenious solutions. Rather than building rigid structures that would collapse under extreme pressure, these animals have evolved bodies that are largely fluid. Their cells contain special pressure-resistant proteins, and many lack gas-filled organs, like swim bladders, that would compress catastrophically at depth. Some deep-sea fish have developed antifreeze proteins in their blood that prevent ice crystals from forming in the near-freezing temperatures of the abyss. Others have evolved specialized pressure-sensing organs that help them maintain their position in the water column without the energy-expensive constant swimming required by many surface fish. The reproductive strategies of deep-sea creatures often reflect the challenges of finding mates in a vast dark environment. Many species are hermaphroditic, capable of functioning as both male and female depending on circumstances. This flexibility doubles the chances that any encounter between individuals might result in successful reproduction. The deep-sea anglerfish has evolved perhaps the most extreme reproductive strategy in the animal kingdom. When a tiny male encounters a much larger female, he doesn't just mate with her, he fuses permanently to her body. But this process is far more complex than simple attachment. The male's immune system essentially shuts down, allowing his tissues to merge completely with the female's circulatory system. Over time, most of his organs disappear, leaving only his reproductive tissues to function as a living sperm bank. Multiple males can attach to a single female, creating what scientists call a living harem. Some female anglerfish have been found with over a dozen attached males, each one perfectly preserved and ready to provide genetic material when the female is ready to spawn. This adaptation ensures that in the vast emptiness of the deep sea, reproduction can occur whenever conditions are optimal, regardless of whether males happen to be present at that moment. This reproductive strategy highlights one of the most challenging aspects of deep-sea life: the incredible rarity of encounters between individuals of the same species. In the crushing darkness, a creature might travel for months or even years without meeting another member of its own kind. Every successful encounter must be maximized, leading to some of the most unusual mating behaviors on Earth. Some deep-sea fish engage in elaborate courtship displays using bioluminescence, creating species-specific light patterns that serve as both identification and attraction. These displays can last for hours, with potential mates circling each other in spiraling dances of light that would put any fireworks show to shame. The patterns are so specific that researchers can sometimes identify species based solely on their bioluminescent courtship displays. Other deep-sea creatures have evolved to release chemical signals that can travel for miles through the still water of the abyss. These pheromone trails create invisible highways that lead potential mates across vast distances. A female deep-sea squid might release a chemical signature that can be detected by males from hundreds of miles away, drawing them through the darkness like a beacon calling ships to shore. The feeding strategies employed by deep-sea creatures are as diverse as they are ingenious. Many are opportunistic feeders, capable of consuming almost anything they encounter. Hagfish, primitive eel-like creatures, are the vultures of the deep sea, capable of consuming an entire whale carcass from the inside out over the course of months. Other deep-sea creatures are highly specialized hunters. The barrel-eye fish has a transparent head and tubular eyes that can rotate upward to spot the silhouettes of prey against the faint light from above. When it sees a target, it rotates its entire head to point its mouth in the right direction for attack. Deep-sea jellies employ a variety of hunting strategies, from passive drifting with trailing tentacles to active pursuit using jet propulsion. Some deep-sea siphonophores create living fishing nets with different parts of their colonial body specialized for different functions. These creatures can stretch for over 40 meters, making them among the longest animals on Earth. The Dumbo octopus, named for its ear-like fins that resemble the Disney elephant's ears, represents the ultimate in deep-sea adaptation. Living at depths of up to 7,000 meters, these octopuses have evolved to be neutrally buoyant, drifting through the water column like living balloons. Their bodies are soft and gelatinous, perfectly adapted to the crushing pressures of the deep. Unlike their shallow water relatives, Dumbo octopuses don't use jet propulsion to move. Instead, they undulate their fins and use their webbed arms to glide through the water with an otherworldly grace. They feed primarily on small crustaceans and worms, using their arms to probe the seafloor sediment for hidden prey. Perhaps most remarkably, many deep-sea creatures exhibit what scientists call gigantism, growing to enormous sizes compared to their shallow water relatives. Giant isopods, crustaceans related to pillbugs, can grow to over a foot in length in the deep sea. Deep sea squids reach lengths that would be impossible in shallow water, where the energy costs of maintaining such large bodies would be prohibitive. This gigantism may be related to the cold temperatures and high pressure of the deep sea, which slow metabolism and allow for different growth patterns. It might also reflect the abundance of space and the absence of many predators that limit size in shallower waters. The sensory world of deep-sea creatures extends far beyond what humans can perceive. Many can detect electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of other animals. Others are sensitive to chemical gradients, so subtle they can follow the trail of a single molecule through miles of water. Some deep-sea creatures have evolved to be nearly transparent, making them invisible to both predators and prey. These glass-like animals drift through the water column like living windows, their internal organs floating in translucent bodies that bend light around them. The behavior of deep-sea creatures often reflects the extreme energy conservation necessary for survival in such a resource-poor environment. Many spend most of their time motionless, conserving energy for brief bursts of activity when feeding opportunities arise. Some enter states of suspended animation, slowing their metabolism to near-death levels during periods when food is unavailable. Migration patterns in the deep sea follow rhythms unknown at the surface. Many creatures participate in the largest migration on Earth, rising toward the surface each night to feed in more productive waters, then descending back to the safety of the deep during daylight hours. This daily vertical migration involves billions of tons of biomass and represents one of the most important energy transfer mechanisms in the ocean. As we explore deeper into the abyss and encounter creatures ever more strange and wonderful, we begin to understand that the deep sea isn't just a different environment, it's a different way of being alive. Here, in the crushing darkness, life has found solutions to challenges we never knew existed, creating a menagerie of creatures that expand our very definition of what's possible. These citizens of the dark have transformed the abyss from an empty void into a thriving metropolis, proving that life doesn't just survive in the most extreme conditions on Earth. It flourishes there in ways that continue to amaze and inspire us. Imagine a garden where no flower has ever bloomed, where no leaf has ever turned toward the sun, where the very concept of photosynthesis is meaningless. Yet this garden teems with life, grows with abundance, and sustains entire communities of creatures in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about how ecosystems function. Welcome to the deep sea's impossible gardens, oases of life powered not by light from above, but by the Earth's own molten heart. The discovery of hydrothermal vents in 1977 shattered one of biology's most fundamental rules. For centuries, scientists believed that all life on Earth ultimately depended on the sun's energy, captured by plants and passed up through food chains in an endless cycle of solar-powered existence. But deep on the Pacific Ocean floor, along the Galapagos Rift, researchers found something that shouldn't exist: thriving ecosystems in places where no sunlight had ever reached. These hydrothermal vents emerge from cracks in the seafloor, where seawater meets the planet's molten interior. The water that erupts from these undersea geysers reaches temperatures of over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, yet somehow life has found a way to flourish in this hellish environment. The secret lies in a process called chemosynthesis, life's alternative to photosynthesis, where bacteria harvest energy not from sunlight, but from the chemical bonds of toxic compounds like hydrogen, sulfide, and methane. The most iconic residents of these vent communities are the giant tube worms, Riftia pachyptila, that can grow taller than a human and as thick as a person's arm. These remarkable creatures have no mouth, no stomach, no digestive system as we understand it. Instead, they have formed an intimate partnership with chemosynthetic bacteria that live within their tissues. The bacteria convert toxic chemicals from the vents into usable energy, while the worms provide them with shelter and nutrients from their blood. It's a relationship so close that the boundaries between host and symbiont become meaningless. The tube worm's bright red plumes, which give vent communities their otherworldly appearance, are actually specialized gills that extract chemicals from the water and transport them to the bacteria living within the worm's body. These plumes can be retracted instantly when danger threatens, disappearing into the white tubes that give these creatures their name. The tubes themselves are made of chitin, the same material that forms insect exoskeletons, and they anchor the worms to the rocky seafloor around the vents. But tube worms are just the beginning of vent ecosystem diversity. Ghostly white crabs scuttle across bacterial mats that carpet the sea floor like living carpets. These crabs, Bythogrea thermidron, are specially adapted to the extreme conditions around vents, with modified gills that can extract oxygen from the superheated water and legs that can withstand temperatures that would cook most creatures instantly. The bacterial mats themselves represent some of the most productive ecosystems on Earth. These vast colonies of chemosynthetic bacteria can cover acres of sea floor, creating a foundation for life that rivals the productivity of tropical rainforests. The bacteria form long, flowing streamers in the current, like underwater grass blowing in an invisible wind. Different species create mats of different colors, some pure white, others yellow with sulfur, still others creating rainbow patterns of orange, purple, and green. Vent shrimp swarm around the hottest areas of vents in numbers that can reach millions of individuals. These translucent creatures have evolved special adaptations to survive in the scalding water, including modified eyes that can detect infrared radiation, allowing them to navigate by the heat signatures of the vents themselves. They graze on the bacterial mats like underwater cattle, their specialized filtering appendages straining bacteria from the water. The scalefish Lepidian schmidti represents another approach to vent survival. These primitive-looking fish lurk in the cooler waters at the edges of vent fields, their bodies covered in armor-like scales that give them their name. They feed on the abundance of smaller creatures attracted to the vents, from amphipods to polychaete worms, taking advantage of the biological richness these chemical oases create in the otherwise sparse deep sea. Cold seeps represent another type of sunless ecosystem, where hydrocarbons like methane and hydrogen sulfide leak slowly from the seafloor. Unlike the dramatic eruptions of hydrothermal vents, cold seeps ooze their chemicals gradually, sometimes for centuries, creating stable ecosystems that can persist for thousands of years. At cold seeps, massive clams the size of dinner plates cluster around areas where methane bubbles up from below. These clams, Calyptogena magnifica, house chemosynthetic bacteria in their gills, just as tube worms do at hydrothermal vents. The bacteria convert methane into energy, sharing their chemical harvest with their clam hosts in exchange for shelter and nutrients. Tube worms also colonize cold seeps, but here they form vast gardens that can cover hundreds of square meters. Unlike their vent-dwelling cousins, cold seep tube worms grow slowly and can live for centuries, creating some of the oldest multicellular organisms on Earth. Some cold seep tube worm colonies may have been growing continuously for over 300 years, making them among the longest-lived animal communities on the planet. The mussels found at cold seeps, Bathymodiolus, create their own unique ecosystems. These large bivalves cluster in dense beds around seep sites, their shells providing habitat for dozens of other species. Inside their tissues live multiple species of bacteria, each specialized to process different chemicals seeping from the sea floor. This partnership is so efficient that some seep mussels can survive for months without feeding on anything other than the energy provided by their bacterial partners. Perhaps the most remarkable cold seep ecosystem lies in the Gulf of Mexico, where brine pools create underwater lakes of super salty water. These pools are so dense that they don't mix with the surrounding seawater, creating distinct boundaries that fish and other creatures can swim through like passing between air and water. The brine is toxic to most marine life, but specialized bacteria thrive in these extreme conditions, forming the base of unique food webs found nowhere else on Earth. The brine pools create some of the most alien landscapes on our planet. The dense, salty water forms distinct layers with different chemical compositions at different depths, creating multiple microenvironments within a single pool. Some areas contain hydrogen sulfide concentrations so high they would be lethal to most life, while others harbor bacteria that produce their own unique cocktails of organic compounds. The edges of these pools shimmer with bacterial films that look like oil slicks, but are actually living communities processing the chemicals that seep continuously from below. Strange creatures have evolved to exploit the unique conditions of brine pools. Specialized mussels cluster around the edges, where the toxic brine meets normal seawater, their shells filtering the chemical boundary layer for nutrients. Deep sea fish patrol the perimeters of these pools, like sharks circling a reef, feeding on the smaller creatures that venture too close to the toxic waters. Some amphipods have evolved the ability to dive briefly into the brine itself, emerging with bacterial prey before the toxic environment can harm them. The discovery of these brine pool ecosystems has revealed that life can create stable communities, even in environments that exist at the very edge of chemical possibility. The bacteria that thrive in these pools represent some of the most extremophilic organisms on Earth, surviving in conditions that approach the theoretical limits of what living chemistry can tolerate. Whale falls represent a third type of sunless ecosystem, created when large whales die and sink to the deep seafloor. A single whale carcass can support a complex community of organisms for decades, progressing through distinct stages of decomposition and colonization that create a succession of different ecosystems over time. The first stage of whale fall succession belongs to the scavengers. Hagfish, sleeper sharks, and other large predators arrive within hours of a whale's death, consuming the soft tissues in a feeding frenzy that can strip tons of flesh from the carcass in a matter of months. These scavengers are followed by smaller creatures like amphipods and polychaete worms that clean the remaining flesh from the bones. Once the soft tissues are consumed, the whale fall enters its second stage, dominated by creatures that specialize in breaking down the remaining organic matter. Bone-eating worms, osedacs, literally bore into the whale's skeleton, using symbiotic bacteria to digest the lipids stored within the bone matrix. These remarkable worms have no mouth or stomach, relying entirely on their bacterial partners to extract nutrients from the whale's bones. The final stage of whale fall succession occurs when the bones themselves become colonized by chemosynthetic bacteria, that feed on hydrogen sulfide produced by the decomposing organic matter within the skeleton. This creates conditions similar to those found at hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, allowing specialized creatures like giant clams and tube worms to establish themselves on the whale's remains. A single large whale carcass can support these successional communities for 50 to 100 years, creating an island of biological productivity in the nutrient-poor deep sea. Scientists estimate that at any given time there may be over 600,000 whale carcasses on the ocean floor, creating a network of stepping stones that allows deep-sea species to disperse across ocean basins. The bacteria that power these sunless ecosystems represent some of the most extreme forms of life on Earth. Hyperthermophile bacteria can survive in temperatures exceeding 250 degrees Fahrenheit, while psychrophile bacteria thrive in near-freezing conditions. Some species can derive energy from iron, sulfur, or even radioactive elements, expanding our understanding of what life can use as fuel. These bacterial communities often form complex, three-dimensional structures that rival coral reefs in their architectural complexity. Bacterial chimneys can tower several meters above the seafloor, while bacterial streamers flow in the current like underwater forests. Some bacterial formations create their own unique microenvironments, with different chemical conditions at different levels, creating niches for specialized organisms. The food webs of sunless ecosystems operate on principles fundamentally different from those powered by photosynthesis. Energy flows not from the sun down through multiple trophic levels, but from chemical reactions up through increasingly complex organisms. Primary production occurs not in surface waters, but in the deepest parts of the ocean, creating inverted food pyramids, where the largest organisms can exist in environments that surface-dwelling creatures would find utterly lifeless. These ecosystems also demonstrate remarkable temporal stability compared to surface communities. While coral reefs and kelp forests can be devastated by storms, temperature changes, or pollution, deep-sea chemosynthetic communities persist in environments that remain essentially unchanged for centuries or millennia. This stability has allowed some species to evolve extreme specializations, becoming so perfectly adapted to their chemical environment that they exist nowhere else on Earth. The discovery of chemosynthetic ecosystems has profound implications for our understanding of life's possibilities. If complex ecosystems can thrive without sunlight in Earth's deepest places, what might exist in the subsurface oceans of Europa or Enceladus? The bacteria that power these systems could represent some of Earth's earliest life forms, giving us glimpses into what life might have looked like billions of years ago when our planet was very different from today. These gardens, without sun, remind us that life is far more creative and resilient than we ever imagined. In places where nothing should be able to survive, we find not just individual organisms clinging to existence, but entire communities thriving in abundance. They challenge our assumptions about what life requires and expand our vision of where we might find it, whether in Earth's deepest trenches or among the moons of distant planets. For most of human history, the ocean floor remained as mysterious as the surface of distant planets. Sailors could cross thousands of miles of open water, navigating by stars and compass, yet they had no idea what lay beneath their hulls. The deep sea was not just unexplored, it was unimaginable, a liquid void that swallowed their crude measuring tools and offered nothing in return but silence. The earliest attempts to fathom the ocean's depths were exercises in pure faith. Ancient mariners would lower weighted ropes over the sides of their vessels, hoping to feel the telltale tug that indicated contact with the bottom. But in the deep ocean, these primitive sounding lines simply vanished into the darkness, their weights disappearing into depths that seemed infinite. When no bottom was found after lowering thousands of feet of rope, sailors concluded they had reached the edge of the world, a place where the sea continued forever downward into the underworld itself. The first recorded attempt at deep ocean sounding occurred in 1521, when Ferdinand Magellan's crew tried to measure the depth of the Pacific during their historic circumnavigation. They lowered a weighted line for over 700 feet without finding bottom, leading Magellan to declare the Pacific unfathomably deep. It would be centuries before anyone realized just how right he was, though for entirely different reasons than he imagined. As maritime trade expanded in the 18th and 19th centuries, the practical need for accurate depth measurements became impossible to ignore. Ships carrying precious cargo needed to know where reefs and shallows lurked, but they also needed to understand the deep ocean routes that could carry them safely across vast distances. The development of more sophisticated sounding techniques became a matter of economic survival for maritime nations. The breakthrough came with the invention of mechanical sounding devices that could carry much longer lines and heavier weights. By the mid-1800s, naval expeditions were regularly conducting soundings in the deep ocean, slowly building a picture of an underwater world far more complex than anyone had imagined. These early measurements revealed something startling. The ocean floor was not a flat, featureless plain, but a landscape of mountains, valleys, and ridges that rivaled anything found on land. But it was the laying of the first transatlantic telegraph cable that truly opened humanity's eyes to the ocean's hidden geography. The cable companies needed detailed maps of the seafloor to determine the best routes for their underwater lines, and they invested heavily in systematic depth measurements across entire ocean basins. What they discovered was a mid-ocean ridge system that stretched like a spine down the center of the Atlantic, a mountain range that would prove to be the longest on Earth. The HMS Challenger expedition of 1872 to 1876 marked the beginning of modern oceanography and fundamentally changed our understanding of what lay beneath the waves. This was no casual survey, but a systematic scientific investigation of the world's oceans that would last nearly 4 years and cover over 68,000 nautical miles. The Challenger carried a crew of scientists who transformed deep-sea exploration from guesswork into rigorous science. They lowered thermometers to measure temperature at different depths, collected water samples to analyze chemical composition, and used improved sounding equipment to map the seafloor with unprecedented accuracy. Most importantly, they deployed dredges and nets that brought up samples of deep-sea life, proving once and for all that the abyss was not the lifeless void that scientists had long assumed. The expedition's findings filled 50 volumes of scientific reports and described over 4,000 species new to science. They discovered the deepest point then known, which they named Challenger Deep in honor of their ship. They mapped underwater mountain ranges, abyssal plains, and deep ocean trenches that revealed the Earth's crust to be far more dynamic and complex than anyone had imagined. But perhaps the most important discovery was not what they found, but what they proved was possible. The Challenger expedition demonstrated that the deep ocean could be studied scientifically, that its mysteries could be unraveled through careful observation and measurement. It established the principles and methods that would guide deep-sea research for the next century, and inspired a generation of scientists to venture into Earth's final frontier. The early 20th century brought new technologies that revolutionized deep-sea exploration. The invention of echo sounding in the wake of the Titanic disaster allowed ships to map the ocean floor by bouncing sound waves off the bottom and measuring the time it took for the echo to return. This technique was far faster and more accurate than lowering weighted lines, and it revealed the ocean floor to have a topography as varied and dramatic as any continent. Echo sounding transformed our understanding of the deep sea from a collection of isolated depth measurements to a comprehensive view of underwater landscapes. Scientists could now see underwater mountain ranges stretching for thousands of miles, abyssal plains that covered vast areas of the ocean floor, and deep trenches that plunged to depths that made the Grand Canyon look shallow by comparison. The development of sonar during World War II added another dimension to ocean exploration. Originally designed to detect submarines, sonar systems could map the seafloor in unprecedented detail, revealing features too small to detect with earlier methods. The post-war years saw an explosion in deep-sea mapping as military and civilian researchers used surplus sonar equipment to chart ocean basins around the world. But mapping the ocean floor was only half the challenge. To truly understand the deep sea, scientists needed to see it directly, to observe its creatures and environments in their natural state. This required the development of vehicles that could carry humans or instruments to depths where no surface dweller had ever ventured. The first successful deep-diving vehicles were simple affairs, little more than reinforced metal spheres with tiny windows and basic life support systems. William Beebe and Otis Barton's bathysphere in the 1930s could descend to depths of over 3,000 feet, allowing the first direct human observations of deep-sea life in its natural habitat. Beebe's vivid descriptions of bioluminescent creatures and alien landscapes captured the public imagination and helped establish deep-sea exploration as one of the great adventures of the 20th century. The Swiss engineer Auguste Piccard took deep-sea exploration to new depths with his bathyscape designs in the 1950s. Unlike the tethered bathysphere, Piccard's vehicles were free-diving submersibles that could maneuver independently at great depths. His son Jacques, along with U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh, used the bathyscaphe Trieste to achieve one of the greatest feats in exploration history: the descent to the bottom of Challenger Deep in 1960. The Trieste's historic dive to the deepest point on Earth proved that human exploration of the abyss was possible, even in the most extreme environments our planet could offer. At a depth of nearly 36,000 feet, under pressure over 1,000 times greater than at sea level, Piccard and Walsh spent 20 minutes on the bottom of the world, observing life in a place where nothing was supposed to survive. But the limitations of human diving became increasingly apparent as deep-sea research expanded. The enormous costs, technical complexities, and safety risks of manned submersibles made them impractical for routine scientific work. The future of deep-sea exploration lay not with human explorers, but with robotic surrogates that could venture where no human could safely go. The development of remotely operated vehicles in the 1970s and 80s revolutionized deep-sea science. These ROVs, controlled from surface ships through fiber optic cables, could stay underwater indefinitely, maneuver with precision impossible for manned vehicles, and carry sophisticated instruments and cameras that provided unprecedented views of deep-sea environments. The discovery of hydrothermal vents in 1977, using the research submersible Alvin, marked a turning point in our understanding of deep-sea ecosystems. But it was ROV technology that allowed scientists to study these environments in detail, spending hours observing the complex interactions between geology, chemistry, and biology that create oases of life in the abyss. Modern deep-sea exploration relies on an array of technologies that would seem like science fiction to early ocean explorers. Autonomous underwater vehicles can map vast areas of seafloor without any human control, following pre-programmed routes and making decisions based on what they encounter. These AUVs can dive for days at a time, covering thousands of square miles and collecting data on everything from water temperature to seafloor geology. Satellite technology has added another dimension to ocean exploration, allowing scientists to map the seafloor from space by measuring tiny variations in the height of the ocean surface caused by gravitational effects of underwater mountains and trenches. These satellite measurements can reveal features on the ocean floor that are invisible to ships passing overhead, providing a global view of seafloor topography that would take centuries to map using traditional methods. Yet for all our technological advances, we have still explored less than 5% of our planet's oceans. The challenges that confronted ancient mariners, lowering weighted ropes into the darkness, remain essentially unchanged. The ocean is vast, hostile to human life, and resistant to easy exploration. Every dive, every mapping mission, every sample collected represents a small victory against the fundamental opacity of the deep sea. The cost and complexity of deep-sea exploration mean that most of the ocean floor remains as mysterious today as it was to Magellan's crew 5 centuries ago. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of our own seafloor, a fact that highlights just how difficult it is to study an environment that covers more than half our planet but remains almost entirely hidden from view. Current efforts to map the entire ocean floor by 2030 represent one of the most ambitious scientific undertakings in human history. The Seabed 2030 project brings together researchers from around the world in an attempt to finally chart the last unmapped regions of our planet. Using advanced sonar systems, autonomous vehicles, and satellite technology, they are working to complete a task that has challenged humanity for millennia. But even as we develop new technologies and launch new expeditions, the ocean continues to surprise us. Every dive reveals new species, new geological features, new ecosystems that challenge our assumptions about the deep sea. The more we explore, the more we realize how much remains unknown about the vast liquid realm that covers most of our planet. The history of deep-sea exploration is ultimately a story about human persistence in the face of the unknown. From ancient mariners dropping weighted ropes into the void to modern scientists controlling robots from thousands of miles away, each generation has developed new tools and techniques, but the fundamental challenge remains. How do you map the unmappable and understand a world that exists beyond the reach of human senses? In the crushing depths of the ocean, where darkness reigns absolute and pressure would flatten most life in an instant, there exists a paradox. What we call the silent deep is actually filled with sound, a hidden symphony of clicks, calls, and vibrations that travel through water with a clarity and range impossible in air. The deep sea speaks, but in languages we are only beginning to understand. Sound moves through water 4 times faster than through air, racing at nearly 1,500 meters per second through the dense medium of the deep ocean. This speed, combined with water's resistance to sound absorption, means that noises created in one part of the ocean can travel literally around the world, following deep sound channels that act like acoustic highways spanning entire ocean basins. The deep sound channel, discovered during World War II, exists at depths between 700 and 1,300 meters, where temperature and pressure conditions create a natural waveguide that can carry sounds for thousands of miles with minimal loss. Whales have likely known about this acoustic highway for millions of years, using it to communicate across distances that would make their calls inaudible in any other medium. The great whales are the undisputed masters of deep ocean communication. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist on Earth, produce calls so low in frequency that they approach the limits of what we can even define as sound. These infrasonic calls, rumbling at frequencies below 20 Hz, can travel across entire ocean basins, allowing whales separated by thousands of miles to maintain contact through the deep sound channel. A blue whale's call can reach intensities of over 180 decibels, making it one of the loudest sounds produced by any living creature. To put this in perspective, a jet engine at takeoff produces about 140 decibels, and sounds above 120 decibels can cause permanent hearing damage in humans. Blue whale calls are so powerful that they can be detected by hydrophones over 500 miles away, creating an acoustic network that spans the globe. But these calls serve purposes beyond simple communication. Research suggests that blue whales may use their powerful vocalizations as a form of echolocation, bouncing sounds off seamounts, continental shelves, and the seafloor itself to navigate the featureless expanses of the open ocean. Their calls may function like acoustic lighthouses, helping other whales locate feeding areas, migration routes, and safe passages through treacherous waters. Humpback whales have developed perhaps the most complex acoustic culture in the animal kingdom. Their songs, which can last for 30 minutes and be repeated for hours, contain elaborate patterns of phrases and themes that change gradually over time. Even more remarkably, all humpback whales in a given ocean basin sing the same song at any particular time, with new musical themes spreading through populations like cultural trends through human societies. These songs appear to serve multiple functions. During breeding season, male humpbacks use their elaborate compositions to attract mates and establish dominance over other males. But the songs continue even outside of mating periods, suggesting they may also function as a form of cultural expression, a way for whales to maintain social bonds and share information across vast distances. The acoustic behavior of sperm whales reveals another dimension of deep ocean communication. These deep diving whales produce rapid sequences of clicks called codas that appear to function like names or identification signals. Different sperm whale families have distinct coda patterns, acoustic signatures that allow them to recognize relatives and maintain contact even when separated by miles of dark water. Sperm whales also use powerful clicking sounds for echolocation, producing the loudest sounds of any animal on Earth. These biosonar clicks can exceed 200 decibels and are focused through the whale's massive head into narrow acoustic beams that can penetrate deep into the water column. Sperm whales may use these intense sound pulses not just for navigation and hunting, but as weapons, stunning or disorienting the giant squid they prey upon in the crushing depths. But whales are not the only creatures that have mastered the acoustic landscape of the deep ocean. Fish produce an astounding variety of sounds, using specialized muscles that vibrate their swim bladders like biological drums. These sounds range from low-frequency rumbles that can travel for miles to rapid-fire clicks and buzzes that serve as close-range communication signals. Deep sea fish have evolved some of the most unusual sound production mechanisms in the animal kingdom. Some species can produce sounds by grinding their teeth, flexing specialized bone structures, or even releasing gas bubbles in controlled sequences. These acoustic displays may help fish locate mates in the vast darkness, establish territories around scarce food sources, or coordinate group movements during daily vertical migrations. The discovery of widespread fish choruses in the deep ocean has revealed that many species participate in acoustic communities that rival bird choruses in their complexity and organization. These underwater concerts often follow daily rhythms, with different species contributing their voices at specific times, creating a structured acoustic environment that may help coordinate feeding, mating, and migration behaviors across multiple species. Even creatures without obvious sound production organs contribute to the deep ocean's acoustic landscape. Snapping shrimp in deep waters produce clicking sounds by collapsing air bubbles with their claws. These sounds can be so intense they create brief flashes of light through sonoluminescence, making sound visible in the darkness. The geological processes of the deep ocean create their own unique soundscape. Underwater earthquakes send shock waves racing through ocean basins. Landslides, volcanic eruptions, and the constant creaking of tectonic plates create a background chorus that forms the acoustic foundation of the deep ocean environment. Marine life has evolved to interpret and navigate using these geological audio cues. Perhaps the most mysterious sounds are those that cannot yet be explained. The bloop, detected in 1997, was an ultra-low frequency sound, loud enough to be detected by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. Initially, scientists speculated it might have been produced by an unknown giant sea creature. However, analysis revealed the bloop was most likely produced by fracturing Antarctic ice shelves, a process that generates sounds of enormous intensity. Other unexplained sounds continue to puzzle marine acoustics researchers. The upsweep, a series of narrow band sounds detected in the Pacific Ocean, occurs seasonally and appears to be geological in origin, possibly related to underwater volcanic activity. The whistle, detected off the coast of Hawaii, remains completely unexplained, a repeating acoustic pattern that seems to serve no obvious natural function. These mysterious sounds remind us that the deep ocean remains largely unexplored acoustically. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth's surface, yet we have comprehensive acoustic monitoring systems in only a tiny fraction of these waters. Every new hydrophone deployment reveals previously unknown soundscapes, from the complex acoustic environments around deep-sea vents to the surprising vocal behaviors of creatures living in the deepest trenches. Modern technology has transformed our ability to study deep ocean acoustics. Networks of hydrophones can now monitor vast areas of ocean in real time, detecting everything from whale migrations to underwater earthquakes. These acoustic observatories provide a window into the deep ocean that operates continuously, capturing sounds that occur at depths and distances impossible for human observers to reach. Passive acoustic monitoring has become one of the most powerful tools for studying deep-sea life. By listening to the sounds creatures make, scientists can track migration patterns, monitor breeding behaviors, and even estimate population sizes without disturbing the animals they study. This approach is particularly valuable in the deep ocean, where visual observation is extremely difficult and the presence of research vessels may alter natural behaviors. The development of autonomous underwater acoustic recorders has extended our listening reach into the deepest parts of the ocean. These devices can be deployed for months at a time, recording the acoustic environment of places that have never been monitored before. When retrieved, they often contain surprises, new types of biological sounds, unexpected geological activity, or acoustic patterns that challenge our understanding of deep ocean processes. Human activities have increasingly disrupted the natural acoustic environment of the deep ocean. Ship noise, seismic surveys for oil exploration, military sonar operations, and underwater construction projects all contribute to a growing wall of anthropogenic sound that can interfere with natural acoustic communication systems that have evolved over millions of years. The impact of human noise on deep ocean life is only beginning to be understood. Whales may be forced to alter their migration routes to avoid noisy shipping lanes or increase the intensity of their calls to communicate over human-generated background noise. Some researchers suggest that the acoustic pollution of the oceans may be contributing to whale strandings and other unusual marine mammal behaviors. Deep sea creatures that rely on sound for navigation, feeding, and reproduction may be particularly vulnerable to acoustic disruption. The precise acoustic cues that guide fish migrations or coordinate breeding behaviors could be masked by human noise, potentially disrupting ecological processes that depend on acoustic communication. Yet sound in the deep ocean also offers hope for conservation and understanding. Acoustic monitoring can detect illegal fishing activities, track the movements of endangered species, and provide early warning of environmental changes that might affect deep ocean ecosystems. The sounds of the deep may ultimately become one of our most powerful tools for protecting these vast hidden realms. As we continue to explore the acoustic landscape of the deep ocean, we are discovering that sound serves as the primary sense for most deep-sea life. In a world without light, where chemical signals dissipate quickly and physical contact is rare, sound becomes the thread that connects organisms across vast distances, the medium through which life in the abyss maintains its complex social and ecological relationships. The deep ocean's acoustic environment represents one of Earth's last great unexplored frontiers, a hidden dimension of our planet where sound travels farther, lasts longer, and carries more information than anywhere else in the natural world. Every click, call, and chorus in this liquid darkness tells a story of adaptation, survival, and connection in the most remote places on Earth. Imagine a world where boiling water is home, where crushing pressure is comfort, where toxic chemicals are food, and where acid strong enough to dissolve metal is simply the neighborhood swimming pool. This isn't science fiction set on some distant exoplanet. This is Earth, just a few miles beneath the waves, where life has learned to thrive in conditions so extreme they redefine our understanding of what life itself can be. The deep sea hosts some of the most extreme environments on our planet, places where the very concept of habitability gets turned inside out. Here, in conditions that would instantly kill most surface life, we find creatures not just surviving, but flourishing, building complex communities and ecosystems that challenge every assumption we've ever made about the limits of biology. At the bottom of the deepest ocean trenches, pressure reaches levels over 1,000 times greater than at sea level. To understand what this means, imagine the weight of a small car pressing down on every square inch of your body from all directions simultaneously. Yet in these crushing depths, we find fish swimming gracefully, their bodies perfectly adapted to pressures that would compress most organisms into paste. The Mariana snailfish, discovered living at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, represents one of the most extreme pressure adaptations known to science. These translucent creatures have no swim bladders, which would collapse instantly under such pressure. Instead, their bodies are composed largely of a gel-like substance that compresses uniformly with the surrounding water. Their bones are reduced to soft cartilage, and their proteins are specially modified to maintain their shape and function under crushing force. But pressure is just one of the extreme conditions that deep-sea life has learned to master. In the vicinity of hydrothermal vents, temperatures can exceed 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. The water around these underwater geysers should be steam, but the immense pressure keeps it liquid, creating a hellish environment where most life would be cooked instantly. Yet, thriving in this inferno are hyperthermophile bacteria, microorganisms that not only tolerate these extreme temperatures, but actually require them to survive. These remarkable creatures have evolved heat-resistant proteins and specialized cellular machinery that functions optimally at temperatures that would destroy the biochemistry of most other life forms. Some hyperthermophiles can survive temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Celsius, making them among the most heat-tolerant organisms on Earth. Pyrococcus furiosus, whose name literally means rushing fireball, thrives in temperatures around 100 degrees Celsius and can survive brief exposures to temperatures exceeding 110 degrees. These archaea have evolved unique enzymes called thermostable proteins that maintain their structure and function at temperatures that would cause most proteins to unfold and become useless. At the opposite extreme, psychrophile bacteria have adapted to survive in the near-freezing waters of the deep ocean, where temperatures hover just above the freezing point of seawater. These cold-loving organisms have evolved antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming within their cells, and their enzymes function efficiently at temperatures that would slow most biochemical reactions to a crawl. The chemistry of deep-sea environments presents another set of seemingly impossible challenges for life. Around hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, the water is saturated with hydrogen sulfide, a gas so toxic it can kill humans in minutes. The pH levels around some vents are so acidic they could dissolve metal, while other areas are so alkaline they would cause severe chemical burns. Acidophile bacteria thrive in these corrosive conditions, living comfortably in environments with pH levels as low as 0, more acidic than battery acid. Ferroplasma acidominus can survive in solutions so acidic they would dissolve nails, while simultaneously processing iron and sulfur compounds that would poison most other life forms. On the alkaline side of the spectrum, alkaliphile bacteria flourish in environments with pH levels exceeding 11, as caustic as household ammonia. These organisms have evolved specialized cell membranes and ion pumps that allow them to maintain the proper internal pH while living in environments that would destroy most cellular structures. Perhaps most remarkably, some deep-sea bacteria derive energy from compounds that are lethal to most life. Chemosynthetic bacteria around hydrothermal vents feed on hydrogen sulfide, converting this deadly gas into usable energy through biochemical pathways completely different from photosynthesis. Other bacteria consume methane, ammonia, or even heavy metals like iron and manganese. The discovery of radiotrophic bacteria, organisms that can derive energy from radioactive decay, has pushed the boundaries of what we consider possible for life even further. These remarkable microorganisms can break down radioactive elements and use the energy released by atomic decay to power their metabolism, suggesting that life might be able to persist even in the most radiologically hostile environments imaginable. Deinococcus radiodurans, known as the most radiation-resistant organism on Earth, can survive radiation doses 3,000 times greater than what would kill a human. This hardy bacterium can reconstruct its own DNA after massive radiation damage, essentially rebuilding its genetic blueprint from fragments. While not exclusively a deep-sea organism, related species found in deep ocean sediments demonstrate similar extraordinary resistance to radiation and other extreme conditions. The pressure adaptations of deep-sea extremophiles extend beyond simple structural modifications. Piezophile bacteria, which require high pressure to survive, have evolved biochemical pathways that actually function better under crushing force. Their enzymes are pressure activated, meaning they become more efficient as pressure increases, the exact opposite of what happens with most biological systems. Some piezophiles cannot survive at normal atmospheric pressure, dying if brought to the surface too quickly. These obligate high-pressure organisms represent a form of life so specialized for extreme conditions that the normal environment of Earth's surface is as lethal to them as the deep ocean is to surface dwellers. The metabolic strategies of deep-sea extremophiles often involve processing compounds and elements that most life forms cannot use. Sulfur-reducing bacteria can breathe sulfur instead of oxygen, while iron-oxidizing bacteria can extract energy from rust. Some archaea can survive on a diet of pure hydrogen, while others thrive on carbon monoxide, a gas that is poisonous to most aerobic life. Methanogenic archaea produce methane as a waste product of their metabolism, essentially burping out natural gas as they digest organic matter. These organisms play crucial roles in deep-sea carbon cycles and may be responsible for some of the mysterious methane emissions detected around cold seeps and mud volcanoes. The genetic adaptations of extremophiles often involve fundamental changes to the basic machinery of life. Heat-loving organisms have evolved DNA repair mechanisms that can quickly fix damage caused by high temperatures, while pressure-adapted species have modified ribosomes that maintain their structure under crushing force. Some extremophiles have evolved entirely novel biochemical pathways for energy production. Rather than using the familiar processes of photosynthesis or cellular respiration, these organisms have developed unique metabolic strategies that allow them to extract energy from chemical gradients, electromagnetic fields, or even quantum mechanical effects. The discovery of a deep subsurface biosphere within the oceanic crust has revealed that life extends far deeper into the Earth than anyone previously imagined. Microorganisms have been found living in rock pores and fractures thousands of meters below the seafloor, surviving in conditions of extreme pressure, temperature, and chemical hostility that make the deep ocean look hospitable by comparison. These subsurface organisms may represent some of the oldest forms of life on Earth, descendants of the earliest microbes that colonized our planet billions of years ago, when surface conditions were far more extreme than they are today. They survive on chemical energy extracted from rock-water interactions, living in slow motion in environments where a single generation might take centuries to complete. The biomass of this subsurface biosphere may exceed that of all surface life combined, suggesting that the majority of life on Earth actually exists in conditions we would consider impossibly extreme. These hidden ecosystems operate on geological timescales, with nutrient cycles that take thousands of years and evolutionary processes that unfold over millions of years. The implications of deep-sea extremophile research extend far beyond Earth's oceans. The discovery that life can thrive in such hostile conditions has revolutionized our understanding of where life might exist elsewhere in the universe. If organisms can survive in boiling acid, crushing pressure, and toxic chemical soups on Earth, what might be possible on other worlds? Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, harbors a subsurface ocean that may contain more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. The conditions in Europa's hidden sea, with its high pressure, chemical complexity, and energy sources from tidal heating, closely resemble the extreme environments where Earth's extremophiles thrive. Enceladus, Saturn's small moon, shoots plumes of water vapor into space from geysers that may be powered by hydrothermal vents similar to those found in Earth's deep ocean. The discovery of organic compounds and energy sources in these plumes suggests that the conditions necessary for extremophile life may exist throughout the outer solar system. Even Mars, with its harsh surface conditions and thin atmosphere, may harbor subsurface environments where extremophiles could survive. The discovery of seasonal methane emissions and possible subsurface water on Mars has led some researchers to speculate that Martian life, if it exists, might resemble the extremophiles found in Earth's deep ocean. The study of extremophiles has practical applications beyond astrobiology. Enzymes from heat-loving bacteria are used in industrial processes that require high temperatures, while radiation-resistant organisms provide insights into developing better cancer treatments and nuclear waste cleanup technologies. Deep-sea extremophiles may hold the key to developing new antibiotics, as their unique biochemistry often produces compounds that are toxic to other microorganisms. The extreme environments they inhabit may have driven the evolution of powerful antimicrobial substances that could prove valuable in fighting drug-resistant infections. The metabolic versatility of extremophiles offers potential solutions to environmental problems. Bacteria that can consume heavy metals might be used to clean up contaminated sites, while organisms that produce methane could be harnessed for renewable energy production. As we continue to explore the deep ocean and discover new forms of extremophile life, we are forced to expand our definition of habitability itself. The extreme organisms of the deep sea remind us that life is far more creative, resilient, and adaptable than we ever imagined. They suggest that the universe may be filled with life forms so alien to our experience that we might not even recognize them as living organisms. The deep sea's extremophiles are more than just biological curiosities. They are proof that life finds a way, even in the most impossible places, under the most hostile conditions, in environments that challenge our most basic assumptions about what it means to be alive. They are Earth's aliens, hiding not among distant stars, but in the crushing darkness beneath our feet, rewriting the rules of biology, one impossible adaptation at a time. The deep ocean doesn't exist in isolation. sealed off from the world above like some forgotten basement of the planet. Instead, it pulses with connections that reach from the deepest trenches to the highest clouds, from Arctic ice sheets to tropical coral reefs. These connections are invisible threads that bind our entire planet together in a web of circulation, chemistry, and life that makes the abyss not just part of Earth's story, but one of its most important authors. The great conveyor belt of ocean circulation begins its journey in the cold waters of the North Atlantic, where winter storms and Arctic winds chill the surface until it becomes dense enough to sink. This process, called deep water formation, creates massive columns of cold, oxygen-rich water that plunge thousands of meters into the abyss, carrying with them the chemical signature of the surface world. As this dense water sinks, it begins a journey that will take it around the entire planet. Flowing southward along the ocean floor, it carries dissolved oxygen, nutrients, and trace elements from the surface into the deep ocean basins. This Atlantic deep water, as oceanographers call it, will travel for over 1,000 years before it returns to the surface, making it one of the slowest and most powerful currents on Earth. The path this deep water takes reads like an epic adventure story. From the North Atlantic, it flows southward past the Caribbean, around the tip of South America, and into the Southern Ocean that surrounds Antarctica. Here, it mixes with even colder, denser water formed around the Antarctic continent, creating Antarctic bottom water, the coldest and densest water mass in the world's oceans. This frigid Antarctic water spreads northward into all three major ocean basins, flowing along the deepest parts of the seafloor like liquid rivers of ice. In the Pacific, this water mass travels northward for thousands of miles, gradually warming and mixing with the waters above it. By the time it reaches the northern Pacific, it has been traveling for over 2,000 years, carrying with it a chemical record of atmospheric conditions from centuries past. The return journey to the surface happens slowly through a process called upwelling that brings deep water back to the photic zone where sunlight can once again drive photosynthesis. This upwelling occurs in specific regions where wind patterns and ocean topography combine to pull deep water toward the surface, creating some of the most productive marine ecosystems on Earth. The nutrients carried up from the deep ocean feed vast blooms of phytoplankton that form the base of marine food webs. These microscopic plants, fertilized by nutrients that began their journey in the deep sea centuries earlier, produce much of the oxygen we breathe and absorb enormous quantities of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This process of deep ocean circulation acts as Earth's climate regulator, moving heat from the equator toward the poles and storing vast amounts of carbon in the deep sea. The ocean holds 50 times more carbon than the atmosphere, and most of this carbon resides in the deep water masses that form the backbone of global circulation. When marine organisms die in surface waters, their remains sink toward the sea floor in a process oceanographers call the biological pump. This constant rain of organic matter, known as marine snow, carries carbon from the atmosphere into the deep ocean, where it can remain stored for centuries. Some of this carbon reaches the deepest trenches, where it may be buried in sediments and removed from the climate system for millions of years. The deep sea acts as Earth's largest carbon reservoir, storing and releasing carbon dioxide in cycles that regulate atmospheric composition over geological timescales. When deep water returns to the surface through upwelling, it brings with it carbon that has been stored in the abyss for centuries, creating a slow but massive exchange between the ocean and atmosphere that help stabilize Earth's climate. Temperature regulation represents another crucial connection between the deep sea and global systems. The enormous thermal mass of the deep ocean acts like a planetary thermostat, absorbing excess heat during warm periods and releasing it during cooler times. The deep ocean has absorbed over 90% of the excess heat generated by human activities, helping to moderate the rate of surface warming, but fundamentally altering the temperature structure of the abyss. The deep ocean's role in climate regulation extends beyond simple heat storage. The formation of deep water in polar regions drives atmospheric weather patterns that affect climate across entire continents. Changes in deep water formation can alter storm tracks, shift precipitation patterns, and influence the strength of phenomena like El Niño and the North Atlantic Oscillation. Nutrient cycling between the deep ocean and surface waters creates connections that span the entire marine food web. Elements essential for life, including nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron, follow complex pathways that link the deepest trenches to surface productivity. Iron, often the limiting nutrient for marine photosynthesis, may travel from hydrothermal vents on the deep sea floor to surface waters thousands of miles away, where it fertilizes vast oceanic deserts and transforms them into productive ecosystems. The vertical migrations that occur in the deep ocean represent one of the most spectacular examples of biological connectivity. Every night, billions of marine organisms rise from the depths to feed in surface waters, then return to the deep before dawn in a massive daily migration that may be the largest movement of biomass on Earth. These migrating organisms, including small fish, squid, crustaceans, and jellyfish, act as biological elevators, transporting nutrients and energy between the surface and deep ocean. They feed in the productive surface waters at night, then carry this energy into the deep sea, where it becomes available to the communities of the abyss. This daily exchange connects the sun-powered ecosystems of the surface to the chemical-powered ecosystems of the deep in a rhythm that has persisted for millions of years. The connection between deep-sea processes and surface productivity becomes especially apparent in regions of upwelling, where deep water, rich in nutrients, rises to the surface and fuels enormous blooms of marine life. The most productive fisheries in the world exist in these upwelling zones, where nutrients from the deep ocean create underwater meadows of phytoplankton that support entire food webs. The deep ocean's influence on weather patterns extends far beyond simple heat exchange. The temperature and salinity structure of deep water masses affects the formation of surface currents that transport heat around the globe. The Gulf Stream, which carries warm water from the Caribbean to northern Europe, is driven partly by the sinking of cold water in the North Atlantic, creating a connection between European climate and processes occurring in the deep ocean. Changes in deep ocean circulation can trigger rapid climate shifts that affect the entire planet. During ice ages, altered patterns of deep water formation helped lock the planet into prolonged cold periods, while rapid changes in ocean circulation may have contributed to sudden warming events that ended these glacial epochs. The deep sea serves as Earth's memory bank, storing information about past climate conditions in its water masses, sediments, and ice cores. Deep water formed centuries ago carries the chemical signature of past atmospheric conditions, while sediment cores from the deep sea floor preserve records of climate change, volcanic eruptions, and mass extinctions stretching back hundreds of millions of years. Marine organisms that migrate between surface and deep waters create biological connections that link ecosystems separated by thousands of meters of water. Sperm whales that dive to feed on deep-sea squid bring nutrients from the abyss to the surface in their waste products. Seabirds that feed on fish returning from deep water migrations help transport marine nutrients to terrestrial ecosystems. The chemical connections between deep and surface waters extend to trace elements that play crucial roles in marine ecosystems. Rare earth elements and heavy metals that enter the ocean through hydrothermal vents and seafloor weathering eventually make their way to surface waters, where they may limit or enhance biological productivity in ways we are only beginning to understand. Deep-sea sediments act as both source and sink for nutrients that cycle through the global ocean. Organic matter buried in deep-sea sediments represents carbon removed from the atmosphere for geological timescales, while the weathering of seafloor rocks releases elements that eventually support marine life in surface waters. The connection between deep ocean processes and atmospheric composition operates on multiple timescales. Short-term exchanges occur through air-sea gas exchange at the surface, while longer-term connections involve the slow circulation of deep water masses that can sequester atmospheric gases for centuries. These processes create feedback loops that help regulate Earth's climate over geological time. Seasonal changes in deep water formation create annual rhythms that affect ocean circulation patterns around the globe. The formation of dense water during polar winters strengthens deep ocean circulation, while reduced formation during warmer months can slow these currents and alter nutrient transport patterns. The deep ocean's role as a heat sink becomes especially important during periods of rapid climate change. The enormous thermal capacity of deep water masses means that the ocean can absorb vast amounts of excess heat without dramatic temperature changes, but this process also means that warming of the deep ocean continues long after surface warming has stabilized. Modern observations have revealed that the deep ocean is changing in response to human activities, with warming temperatures, changing chemistry, and altered circulation patterns extending into the deepest basins. These changes in the abyss will continue to influence global climate for centuries to come, creating connections between human activities today and planetary conditions far into the future. The recognition that the deep ocean is intimately connected to all other Earth systems has transformed our understanding of how the planet works as an integrated whole. Rather than viewing the abyss as a separate alien realm, we now understand it as the foundation upon which all other marine ecosystems depend, the engine that drives global climate, and the reservoir that stores Earth's memory of past environmental conditions. These connections remind us that nothing on our planet exists in isolation. The deep sea reaches upward through countless invisible threads to touch every aspect of Earth's environmental systems, from the air we breathe to the weather outside our windows. Understanding these connections is crucial for predicting how our planet will respond to ongoing environmental changes, and for developing strategies to protect both the deep ocean and the global systems it supports. For millions of years, the deep sea existed as Earth's last sanctuary, protected by darkness, pressure, and distance from the reach of human influence. But as our technology has advanced and our appetite for resources has grown, even the deepest places on our planet have begun to feel the weight of human activity. Today, the abyss faces threats that would have been unimaginable just decades ago. challenges that test whether these ancient ecosystems can survive their first encounter with industrial civilization. The seafloor of the deep ocean holds treasures that have caught the attention of mining companies around the world. Scattered across the abyssal plains, like a vast underwater treasure field, lie billions of polymetallic nodules, potato-sized lumps of metal that have been growing on the seafloor for millions of years. These nodules contain high concentrations of manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt, elements that are essential for manufacturing batteries, electronics, and renewable energy technologies. The process that creates these nodules is almost impossibly slow. Over millions of years, metals dissolved in seawater precipitate around small objects on the sea floor, building up layer by layer like underwater pearls. A nodule the size of a golf ball may have taken 4 million years to form, making them among the slowest growing objects on Earth. Yet the demand for the metals they contain has made them targets for large-scale mining operations that could harvest in decades what took nature eons to create. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific Ocean, an area larger than the continental United States, contains an estimated 21 billion tons of these nodules. Mining companies have proposed using massive machines that would crawl across the seafloor like underwater bulldozers, sucking up nodules and the top layer of sediment before pumping the mixture to ships on the surface. The scale of these operations would be enormous, with single mining ships processing thousands of tons of seafloor material every day. But the environmental cost of deep-sea mining could be catastrophic. The abyssal plains where nodules form support unique ecosystems that depend on the stable conditions that have existed for millions of years. Xenophyrophores, giant single-celled organisms that create complex three-dimensional structures on the seafloor, could be wiped out by mining operations. These creatures, some of which may be thousands of years old, provide habitat for countless smaller organisms and play crucial roles in deep-sea nutrient cycling. The sediment clouds created by deep-sea mining could smother filter-feeding organisms across vast areas, while the noise and vibration from mining equipment could disrupt the acoustic environment that many deep-sea creatures depend on for communication and navigation. Perhaps most concerning of all, we have no idea how long it would take for these ecosystems to recover, or if they could recover at all. Hydrothermal vents present another target for deep-sea mining, as the chimney structures around these underwater hot springs are rich in valuable minerals, including gold, silver, copper, and rare earth elements. Unlike the slow-growing nodules of the abyssal plains, these mineral deposits form relatively quickly as superheated water, laden with dissolved metals, erupts from the sea floor and cools rapidly in contact with cold seawater. Several companies have obtained licenses to explore vent fields for mining potential, particularly in the territorial waters of small island nations that see deep-sea mining as a path to economic development. But vent ecosystems may be even more vulnerable to mining than nodule fields, as they support complex communities of highly specialized organisms that exist nowhere else on Earth. The chemosynthetic bacteria that form the foundation of vent food webs require the specific chemical conditions created by active venting. Destroying the mineral chimneys that channel these chemicals would eliminate the entire ecosystem, potentially driving endemic species extinct before we even have a chance to study them. Many vent organisms are found at only a single location, making them extraordinarily vulnerable to local disturbances. Deep sea fishing has already demonstrated how quickly human activities can devastate abyssal ecosystems. Orange roughy, a fish that can live over 150 years, was fished to near extinction in just decades, as trawling fleets moved into deeper waters seeking new stocks. Bottom trawling destroys everything in its path. Ancient deep-sea coral gardens that took centuries to grow are reduced to rubble in minutes. Seamount ecosystems supporting endemic species have been devastated by fishing fleets targeting these underwater mountains. The slow growth and late reproductive age of deep-sea fish make them especially vulnerable. Orange roughy doesn't reach sexual maturity until 20 to 30 years old. Harvesting these fish faster than they can reproduce has led to population collapses that may take centuries to recover. Perhaps most troubling of all is the discovery that human pollution has reached even the deepest parts of the ocean. Microplastics, tiny fragments of plastic debris, have been found in the stomachs of creatures living in the deepest trenches. The Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles beneath the surface, contains plastic fibers that have somehow made their way from surface waters to the deepest point on Earth. These microplastics don't just accumulate in the deep sea, they become integrated into deep-sea food webs. Filter-feeding organisms mistake plastic particles for food, concentrating these pollutants in their tissues. When these creatures are eaten by larger predators, the plastics move up the food chain, reaching concentrations that may affect the health and reproduction of deep-sea organisms. Chemical pollutants have also found their way to the deep ocean. PCBs, toxic industrial chemicals that were banned decades ago, have been detected in the tissues of organisms living in the deepest trenches. These persistent organic pollutants bioaccumulate in fat tissues and can cause reproductive problems, immune system dysfunction, and developmental abnormalities in marine organisms. Heavy metals from industrial activities, including mercury, lead, and cadmium, have been detected in deep-sea sediments and organisms far from any obvious source of contamination. These metals can accumulate in the tissues of long-lived deep-sea organisms, potentially affecting their health and the health of anything that consumes them. Climate change represents perhaps the greatest long-term threat to deep-sea ecosystems. As the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it becomes more acidic, a process called ocean acidification. The deep ocean is particularly vulnerable to acidification because the cold, high-pressure conditions enhance the solubility of carbon dioxide in seawater. Ocean acidification affects organisms that build shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, making it harder for them to maintain their protective structures. Deep sea corals, which create some of the most diverse ecosystems in the abyss, are particularly vulnerable. As the ocean becomes more acidic, these corals may be unable to maintain their calcium carbonate skeletons, leading to the collapse of entire reef ecosystems. Rising ocean temperatures also threaten deep-sea environments. While temperature changes in the deep ocean are much smaller than at the surface, even slight warming can have dramatic effects on organisms adapted to the stable conditions of the abyss. Changes in temperature can alter the density structure of the ocean, potentially disrupting the circulation patterns that bring oxygen and nutrients to deep-sea communities. The oxygen content of deep-sea environments is declining as warmer water holds less dissolved gas, and changes in circulation reduce the transport of oxygen from surface waters. This process, called ocean deoxygenation, creates expanding dead zones where most marine life cannot survive. As these low oxygen zones expand, they could squeeze deep-sea ecosystems into ever smaller areas of habitable water. Despite these mounting threats, efforts to protect deep-sea environments are beginning to gain momentum. The International Seabed Authority, which regulates mining in international waters, has been developing environmental guidelines that would require comprehensive impact assessments before any deep-sea mining could begin. Some scientists and environmental groups are calling for a complete moratorium on deep-sea mining until we better understand these ecosystems and their vulnerability to disturbance. Marine protected areas are being established in some deep-sea regions, creating refuges where ecosystems can function without human interference. The Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands protects deep-sea ecosystems across an area larger than all U.S. national parks combined. Similar reserves are being proposed for other deep-sea regions, including areas around hydrothermal vents and seamounts. The challenge of protecting the deep sea is complicated by the fact that most of these environments lie in international waters, beyond the jurisdiction of any single nation. Creating effective protection requires international cooperation and agreement on regulations that would apply to activities throughout the global ocean. New technologies are being developed to monitor deep-sea environments and detect changes caused by human activities. Autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with sensors can patrol vast areas of ocean, detecting pollution, monitoring ecosystem health, and providing early warning of environmental problems. Satellite monitoring can track fishing vessels and detect illegal activities in protected areas. The economic pressures driving threats to the deep sea are unlikely to disappear, as demand for minerals and fish continues to grow with human population and economic development. However, growing awareness of the value and vulnerability of deep-sea ecosystems is creating pressure for more sustainable approaches to using ocean resources. Alternative approaches to deep-sea mining are being explored, including recycling programs that could reduce demand for virgin materials, and the development of substitute materials that don't require rare elements from the deep sea. Sustainable fishing practices could allow some use of deep-sea resources while ensuring that populations remain viable over the long term. The deep sea stands at a crossroads. The same technological advances that have allowed us to explore these remote environments have also made them accessible to exploitation. Whether these ancient ecosystems survive their encounter with industrial civilization may depend on our ability to recognize their value not just as sources of resources, but as irreplaceable components of Earth's life support systems. The choices we make about deep-sea protection in the coming decades will determine whether future generations inherit oceans that still harbour their full complement of wonders, or whether we will have transformed the last wild frontier on Earth into another industrial landscape, harvested and depleted like so many environments before it. Standing at the threshold of a new era in ocean exploration, we find ourselves equipped with technologies that would have seemed like magic to the early pioneers who first lowered weighted ropes into the abyss. Yet for all our advances, we have barely scratched the surface of what lies beneath the waves. The future of deep-sea exploration promises to unlock mysteries that will reshape our understanding of life, Earth, and perhaps our place in the universe itself. The next generation of deep-sea exploration vehicles is already taking shape in laboratories around the world. Autonomous underwater vehicles are becoming smaller, smarter, and more capable with each iteration. Future AUVs will operate in swarms, coordinating their movements like schools of mechanical fish to map vast areas of seafloor with unprecedented detail. These robotic explorers will be able to stay underwater for months at a time, powered by advanced fuel cells or even harvesting energy from the temperature differences between surface and deep waters. Biomimetic design is revolutionizing how we build vehicles for the deep sea. Engineers are studying the fluid dynamics of jellyfish to create more efficient propulsion systems, while the pressure-resistant bodies of deep-sea fish inspire new hull designs that can withstand crushing depths without the massive weight of traditional submersibles. Future exploration vehicles may look less like submarines and more like the creatures they're designed to study. Artificial intelligence is transforming how we explore and understand the deep ocean. Machine learning algorithms can now identify species in underwater footage faster and more accurately than human experts, while neural networks trained on sonar data can detect geological features and biological activity that would be invisible to traditional analysis methods. AI systems are learning to pilot autonomous vehicles through complex underwater terrain, making real-time decisions about where to explore based on what they encounter. The integration of AI with exploration vehicles is creating a new class of truly intelligent underwater robots. These systems can adapt their behavior based on what they discover, following chemical plumes to their sources, tracking migrating animals across vast distances, or investigating unusual geological formations without human intervention. They represent a shift from remote-controlled exploration to truly autonomous discovery. Sensor technology is advancing at a breathtaking pace, giving us new ways to perceive the deep ocean environment. Chemical sensors can now detect trace amounts of organic compounds, allowing researchers to map the distribution of life in the water column with unprecedented precision. Advanced sonar systems can create three-dimensional images of underwater landscapes in real time, while new acoustic technologies can distinguish between different species based on the unique sound signatures of their movements. Environmental DNA analysis is revolutionizing how we study deep-sea biodiversity. By filtering seawater and analyzing the genetic material it contains, researchers can identify every species that has passed through an area without ever seeing the organisms themselves. This technique is revealing hidden biodiversity in the deep ocean, detecting rare species and tracking population changes across entire ocean basins. The democratization of deep-sea exploration is perhaps one of the most exciting developments on the horizon. Advances in technology are making deep-sea research more accessible to smaller institutions, developing nations, and even citizen scientists. Low-cost autonomous vehicles built with off-the-shelf components are bringing deep-sea exploration within reach of university programs that could never afford traditional research vessels. Telepresence technology is allowing scientists around the world to participate in deep-sea expeditions without leaving their laboratories. High-definition video feeds and real-time data transmission enable researchers to control underwater vehicles and analyze discoveries as they happen, regardless of their physical location. This collaborative approach is accelerating the pace of discovery and allowing expertise from around the globe to be brought to bear on deep-sea mysteries. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are creating new ways to experience and study the deep ocean. Researchers can now immerse themselves in three-dimensional reconstructions of underwater environments, walking through virtual deep-sea landscapes and examining geological formations from impossible angles. These tools are not just changing how we study the deep sea, but how we share its wonders with the public. The potential for biomimicry inspired by deep-sea organisms is only beginning to be explored. The pressure-resistant proteins found in deep-sea creatures could lead to new materials that maintain their properties under extreme conditions. Bioluminescent systems from deep-sea organisms are inspiring new approaches to energy-efficient lighting and display technologies. The efficient swimming motions of deep-sea creatures are being studied to develop more efficient underwater vehicles and even wind turbines. Deep-sea aquaculture represents a frontier that could help feed growing human populations while reducing pressure on wild fish stocks. The stable temperatures and pristine water quality of many deep-sea environments make them ideal for raising certain species of fish and shellfish. Offshore aquaculture facilities could use the natural productivity of upwelling zones to grow food with minimal environmental impact. Advanced materials science is creating new possibilities for deep-sea structures and habitats. Self-healing materials that can repair damage from pressure and corrosion could enable permanent research stations on the deep-sea floor. Metamaterials with precisely engineered properties could create underwater optical devices that work in the near-total darkness of the abyss. The space exploration connection to deep-sea research continues to strengthen as we recognize the similarities between exploring Earth's oceans and the subsurface seas of other worlds. Techniques developed for deep-sea exploration are being adapted for missions to Europa and Enceladus, while technologies designed for space exploration find new applications in the crushing depths of Earth's oceans. Future missions to ocean worlds will likely rely heavily on autonomous systems similar to those being developed for deep-sea exploration. The communication delays inherent in interplanetary missions make autonomous decision-making essential, and the deep sea provides the perfect testing ground for these technologies. Underwater vehicles exploring Earth's abyssal plains today may be the ancestors of the robots that will one day swim in alien oceans. The integration of quantum technologies with deep-sea exploration promises to unlock new capabilities that seem almost supernatural. Quantum sensors could detect gravitational anomalies caused by underwater geological structures, while quantum communication systems could enable instantaneous data transmission from the deepest trenches. Quantum computing could process the vast amounts of data generated by modern ocean exploration missions, finding patterns and connections that would be impossible to detect with conventional computers. Nanotechnology is opening new frontiers in deep-sea research. Microscopic sensors could be deployed in vast numbers to create detailed maps of chemical gradients and biological activity. Nanorobots could potentially explore environments too small or delicate for conventional vehicles, investigating the internal structures of deep-sea organisms or mapping the microscale architecture of bacterial communities. The future of deep-sea mining may look very different from current proposals, with new technologies enabling more selective and less destructive resource extraction. Biological mining, using engineered microorganisms to extract valuable metals from seawater or sediments, could eliminate the need for massive mechanical systems. Advanced recycling technologies could reduce demand for virgin materials from the deep sea, while synthetic biology could produce valuable compounds without environmental destruction. Climate intervention technologies may increasingly rely on the deep ocean's vast capacity for carbon storage. Enhanced weathering processes could accelerate the natural absorption of carbon dioxide by deep-sea sediments, while artificial upwelling systems could increase the ocean's capacity to absorb atmospheric carbon. These technologies must be developed carefully to avoid unintended consequences for deep-sea ecosystems. The role of citizen science in deep-sea exploration will continue to expand as technology becomes more accessible. Smartphone apps already allow the public to help analyze underwater footage and identify species, while virtual reality experiences bring the deep sea to classrooms around the world. Future technologies may enable real-time participation in deep-sea exploration, with citizen scientists controlling underwater vehicles and making discoveries from their homes. Advanced modeling and simulation technologies are creating digital twins of deep-sea environments, allowing researchers to test hypotheses and predict ecosystem responses without disturbing fragile environments. These virtual ecosystems, fed by real-time data from underwater sensors, could become powerful tools for understanding and protecting deep-sea biodiversity. The development of underwater cities and permanent human habitats in the deep sea remains a distant but tantalizing possibility. Advances in life support systems, pressure-resistant materials, and underwater construction techniques could eventually enable long-term human presence in the abyss. Such habitats would provide unprecedented opportunities for deep-sea research while opening new frontiers for human civilization. Biotechnology applications derived from deep-sea organisms are just beginning to be explored. Extremophile enzymes from deep-sea bacteria could revolutionize industrial processes, while antifreeze proteins from deep-sea fish could enable new medical preservation techniques. The unique biochemistry of deep-sea life represents a vast library of potential applications that we are only beginning to read. The future of deep-sea exploration will likely be characterized by international cooperation on an unprecedented scale. The global nature of ocean systems requires coordinated research efforts that transcend national boundaries. Future deep-sea exploration programs may resemble international space programs, with shared costs, shared benefits, and shared discoveries. Perhaps most importantly, the future of deep-sea exploration will be shaped by our growing recognition that these environments are not separate from human civilization, but integral to our planet's life support systems. As we develop new technologies to explore and understand the deep sea, we must also develop new approaches to protecting and preserving these remarkable ecosystems. The deep sea of tomorrow will be both more accessible and more protected than ever before. Advanced technologies will allow us to explore every trench and map every seamount, while new conservation strategies will ensure that these discoveries contribute to preservation rather than exploitation. The challenge for future generations will be balancing our desire to understand these environments with our responsibility to protect them. As we stand on the brink of this new era in deep-sea exploration, we can only imagine what discoveries await us in the crushing darkness below. The technologies we develop today will determine not just what we find in the abyss, but how we choose to interact with it. The future of the deep sea is in our hands, and the choices we make will echo through the depths for generations to come. In the deepest places on Earth, where darkness has reigned for millions of years, and pressure would crush our bodies in an instant, life has quietly mastered lessons that we, in our bright and hurried world above, are only beginning to understand. The abyss doesn't just harbour strange creatures and alien landscapes. It holds wisdom about existence itself, teachings written in the language of adaptation, survival, and the patient persistence of being. Perhaps the most profound lesson the deep sea offers is the power of patience. In our surface world, we measure time in heartbeats and hurried moments, in quarterly reports and deadline-driven days. But in the abyss, time moves to a different rhythm entirely. A deep-sea coral may spend centuries building its skeleton, one calcium carbonate molecule at a time. A Greenland shark may live for 400 years, swimming slowly through the Arctic depths, its life spanning the rise and fall of human civilizations. This patience isn't passive waiting. It's an active engagement with time that recognizes the power of incremental change. Every creature in the deep sea represents millions of years of tiny adjustments, minute adaptations that accumulate into something extraordinary. The anglerfish didn't develop its bioluminescent lure overnight. The giant squid didn't grow its dinner plate eyes in a single generation. These remarkable adaptations are the result of countless small changes, each one building on the last, creating complexity through the compound interest of evolution. In our fast-paced world, where instant gratification has become the norm and rapid change is often equated with progress, the deep sea reminds us that some of the most profound transformations happen slowly, almost imperceptibly. The most stable ecosystems on Earth exist in the deep ocean precisely because they change gradually, adapting to challenges with the kind of patience that allows for lasting solutions rather than quick fixes. The abyss also teaches us about resilience in the face of seemingly impossible conditions. Every organism living in the deep sea exists in an environment that would be instantly lethal to most surface life. Yet they don't just survive, they thrive. They've learned to transform obstacles into opportunities, turning crushing pressure into a structural advantage, converting toxic chemicals into food, making their own light in a world without Sunday. This kind of resilience doesn't come from fighting against difficult conditions, but from finding ways to work with them, to use constraints as creative challenges rather than limitations. The vampire squid doesn't struggle against the low oxygen environment of the deep ocean's oxygen minimum zone. Instead, it has evolved the lowest metabolic rate of any cephalopod, essentially redesigning its entire approach to living to match its environment's possibilities. Deep-sea creatures embody a form of resilience that's both profound and practical. They demonstrate that thriving isn't about conquering your environment, but about finding your unique place within it. The hagfish doesn't try to compete with faster, more agile fish. Instead, it has become the master of its own niche, perfectly adapted to a lifestyle that no other vertebrate can match. The interconnectedness revealed by deep-sea ecosystems offers another crucial lesson for our surface world. In the abyss, nothing exists in isolation. The whale that dies at the surface becomes a feast that sustains deep-sea communities for decades. The bacteria that chemosynthesis around hydrothermal vents support complex food webs that stretch across the abyssal plains. The daily vertical migration of billions of small creatures connects surface productivity to deep-sea survival in an endless cycle of exchange. This interconnectedness operates across scales that humble our human perspective. The deep ocean circulation that begins with winter storms in the North Atlantic carries nutrients and oxygen to trenches on the other side of the planet. A volcanic eruption on a mid-ocean ridge can influence ecosystem development thousands of miles away. The deep sea reveals a planet where every process, no matter how local it might seem, participates in global patterns of connection and exchange. These connections remind us that our own actions, no matter how small they might seem, ripple outward in ways we might never fully comprehend. The plastic bottle discarded carelessly on a city street may eventually find its way to the deepest trench on Earth. The carbon dioxide released by our daily activities becomes part of the ocean chemistry that shapes deep-sea ecosystems for centuries to come. The deep sea's relationship with mystery offers perhaps its most challenging lesson for our information-saturated age. In a world where we expect to have answers at our fingertips, where uncertainty is often seen as a problem to be solved rather than a condition to be embraced, the abyss reminds us that not knowing can be a source of wonder rather than frustration. The deep ocean has been studied for over a century, yet it continues to surprise us with every expedition. New species are discovered regularly. New ecosystems are found in places where nothing was expected to live. New connections are revealed between processes we thought we understood. This ongoing mystery isn't a failure of science, but one of its greatest gifts. It keeps us humble, curious, and open to possibilities we haven't yet imagined. The creatures of the deep sea have learned to navigate a world where certainty is rare and adaptability is essential. They exist in an environment where food sources are unpredictable, where encounters with mates might be separated by years, where the only constant is change occurring on timescales that dwarf individual lifespans. They've developed strategies for thriving in uncertainty that serve them well in an inherently unpredictable world. This comfort with uncertainty translates into a kind of wisdom about living with incomplete information. Deep-sea creatures don't wait for perfect conditions to act. They make decisions based on the information available, adapt when circumstances change, and maintain flexibility in the face of an unknowable future. These are skills that serve any organism well, whether it's navigating the crushing depths of the ocean or the complex uncertainties of human existence. The beauty that exists in the seemingly inhospitable depths challenges our assumptions about where we might find meaning and wonder. The deep sea is cold, dark, and under crushing pressure, yet it harbors some of the most beautiful phenomena on Earth. Bioluminescent displays create living galaxies in the darkness. Translucent creatures drift like living glass through the water column. Bacterial mats paint the seafloor in colors that exist nowhere else in nature. This beauty isn't accidental or decorative. It serves functions essential for survival, communication, camouflage, predation, reproduction. But the fact that functional adaptations have taken such aesthetically striking forms suggests something profound about the relationship between beauty and survival, between form and function, between the practical and the transcendent. The deep-sea beauty reminds us that wonder can be found in the most unexpected places, that aesthetic experience isn't limited to comfortable, familiar environments. Some of the most moving encounters with natural beauty occur in places that challenge us, that take us outside our comfort zones, that force us to see the world from perspectives we never could have imagined. The deep sea's approach to energy and resources offers practical wisdom for a world grappling with sustainability challenges. In the abyss, nothing is wasted. Every scrap of organic matter that drifts down from above is used and reused through complex cycles of decomposition and regeneration. Creatures have evolved to extract maximum value from minimal resources, to store energy efficiently, and to use only what they need. The tube worms around hydrothermal vents don't have mouths or stomachs, yet they thrive by hosting bacteria that convert toxic chemicals into usable energy. This kind of partnership, where different organisms contribute different capabilities to achieve shared success, represents a model of cooperation that transcends individual limitations. These partnerships extend throughout deep-sea ecosystems, creating networks of mutual support that enhance the survival of all participants. The deep sea demonstrates that collaboration isn't just a nice ideal, but a practical necessity in challenging environments. The most successful deep-sea organisms are often those that have learned to work together, to share resources, and to create communities that are stronger than any individual member. The temporal perspective of the deep sea offers a counterweight to our culture's emphasis on immediate results and rapid change. Deep-sea organisms exist in geological time, where meaningful change occurs over millennia rather than moments. This long view allows for a different kind of planning, a different understanding of success, a different relationship with the future. A deep-sea sponge that lives for thousands of years experiences history on a scale that encompasses entire civilizations. From its perspective, human activities are brief episodes in a much longer story. This doesn't diminish the importance of human actions, but it places them in a context that can be both humbling and liberating. The deep sea's temporal perspective suggests that some problems require solutions that think beyond immediate concerns, that consider consequences across generations, that value stability and sustainability over quick gains. The most successful deep-sea ecosystems are those that have found ways to persist through countless changes, adapting when necessary but maintaining core patterns that have served them well across millions of years. Perhaps most importantly, the deep sea teaches us about finding our place in systems larger than ourselves. Every creature in the abyss exists as part of something bigger: food webs, chemical cycles, global circulation patterns, evolutionary processes that connect all life on Earth. This participation in larger systems doesn't diminish individual importance, but places it in a context that reveals deeper meanings and connections. The deep-sea creatures don't struggle against their place in these larger systems. They find ways to contribute that enhance both their own survival and the health of the whole. They demonstrate that individual success and collective well-being aren't competing goals, but complementary aspects of a life well lived. These lessons from the abyss aren't just abstract philosophical insights, they're practical wisdom tested by millions of years of survival in some of the most challenging conditions on Earth. They offer guidance for navigating uncertainty, building resilience, finding beauty in unexpected places, working cooperatively, thinking long-term, and discovering meaning through connection to something larger than ourselves. The deep sea reminds us that life is far more creative, resilient, and interconnected than we often recognize in our daily experience. It suggests that the challenges we face, whether personal or collective, might be opportunities for the kind of profound adaptation that creates new possibilities rather than merely solving immediate problems. In our bright, fast-paced surface world, we could benefit from spending more time contemplating the patient wisdom of the abyss, not to escape from our human concerns, but to gain perspective on them, to see them in the context of the larger systems we're part of, to find inspiration for new ways of living that honor both our individual needs and our connections to the whole. The deep sea waits in patient darkness, holding its lessons like ancient treasures, ready to share its wisdom with anyone willing to listen to its quiet teachings about resilience, beauty, connection, and the profound creativity of life itself. And so we rise slowly from our journey into the abyss, carrying with us glimpses of a world that exists beyond the reach of sunlight, beyond the familiar rhythms of surface life. We've descended through layers of increasing strangeness and discovered that the deep sea isn't empty darkness, but a realm of patient wonders, where life has found ways to flourish in conditions that redefine possibility itself. The creatures we've encountered in these crushing depths don't ask for our understanding, don't perform for our cameras, don't depend on our approval. They simply exist, as they have for millions of years, following rhythms older than continents, participating in cycles larger than civilizations. In their quiet persistence, they remind us that mystery isn't the enemy of knowledge, but its most faithful companion. Perhaps the greatest gift the abyss offers isn't answers, but better questions. Not solutions, but deeper appreciation for complexity. Not conquest, but connection to something vast and ancient and ongoing. The deep sea teaches us that wonder doesn't require comprehension, that beauty doesn't need explanation, that some of the most profound truths are discovered not by solving, but by witnessing. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember that beneath every familiar surface lies depth beyond imagining. The abyss isn't somewhere else. It's here, patient and enduring, holding its secrets in the dark water beneath our feet. And in that patient darkness, life continues its ancient dance, writing stories in languages we're still learning to read, reminding us that the most beautiful mysteries are often those that remain beautifully, necessarily mysterious.